Welcome back to another episode of the Man That Can Project podcast. I'm your host, Lachlan Stewart, and today we're going to dive into a topic that touches many lives, yet is clouded with a bit of stigma and misunderstanding, and that's going to be addiction. With us is a man who's walked the challenging path of addiction, faced its darkest corners, and emerged with insights that are both profound and transformative. Drew Wilde, welcome, brother.
Thank you, bro.
You're also known as the addiction guy, which is pretty bloody cool. So your journey from rock bottom to redemption is nothing short of inspiring. And I was saying I listened to about 3 hours worth of podcasts of you chatting yesterday, which was great to understand more about your story and your thoughts around addiction and the road to recovery. And for me, it was cool because we have a lot of things that we align with, but I'm also going to try and play devil's advocate to a point because I'm sure there's people,
I love that.
You know, there's two sides to every story.
Of course.
For everyone listening, before we delve into the conversation, a quick shout out to our amazing listeners. 64% of you have hit the follow button on Spotify. We want to get that up. So if you're listening and you haven't hit follow, do that for me. It'll make me happy. And 73% on Apple. So if we were to make this a battle between Apple and Spotify, Apple's dominating. Absolutely dominating. So make sure you hit follow if you haven't already. So please take a moment to do that. Not only will you never miss an episode, but you'll also make me an incredibly happy dude. Let's keep the momentum going. Drew, welcome to the show. Let's dive in with a hard-hitting question to kick it off.
Let's go.
Have you ever found yourself trapped in a cycle knowing it's causing you harm, yet feeling powerless to break free?
I lived it. I lived it for damn near fucking probably... Shit, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 years of my life. Yeah.
At what point was it that you realized you were stuck in that cycle?
I think the first experience was when I was a lot younger. I was probably, I don't know, maybe 21, 22 when things started getting really bad. And I realized I actually couldn't stop. Like there was something in me, there was this compulsion, there was something that was like this, it felt like an out-of-body experience. It didn't feel like me that was in control. It was like, I need this to survive. Like this is like, it was like my medicine, you know, and I need this. And there was a real tipping point from like, you know, it just being like something that was happening on the weekend to like, this is now an everyday occurrence. And if I don't have my quote-unquote medicine, you know, I'm in pain, ultimately, is kind of what I felt.
So you're referring to the medicine, quote-unquote medicine, as your vice, would you say?
100%. My vices, my crutches for me at that age were mostly alcohol, but, you know, recreational drugs at that point, 22.
Yep.
Definitely got worse later on, but yeah, I mean, 22 was when I first ended up in rehab for the first time. Came out, I sort of stayed clean and sober for like maybe 9 months, and then just sat on that merry-go-round. Like that, like if you read those words again, like that was my life for like another 8 years. It was just a cycle, and I call it the cycle of addiction. It's like, for whatever reason, I decide I could go and to have a drink again, you know, it might be a good day, it might be a shit day. I get a message from mates like, hey bro, like, you want to come to the pub, whatever, have a pint. Yeah, cool, sweet. And for me, it was like rolling the dice. It was like Russian roulette. It's like I literally never knew if I was going to be out for a weekend. By this point in my life, I also had an addiction to prescription drugs. So I had a heavy dependency on Valium, which is a benzodiazepine. Thanks to rehab, actually.
Oh, really?
Shout out rehab for that one. Yeah, rehab's a great way to pick up new drug addictions. They use it to help you, and I understand why they use it. They use it to help you detox. Alcohol is actually one of the hardest substances to detox from, and most dangerous. You can go, if you've been drinking heavily, steadily, daily, for a long period of time, you can basically go into what they call DTs and have seizures and die.
It's crazy that it's one of the hardest to wean yourself off, yet it's still one that's legal.
Oh, yeah, don't we fucking started on that. But this is where I don't want to demonize the vice, right? And we'll eventually get to that point. Like the whole sort of ethos of what I talk about is that the thing isn't the thing. For me, 100% sure it was like drugs, prescription drugs, and alcohol. But I truly believe everyone's got something. You know, this is where I say like addiction and distraction are synonymous. Like, and if everyone that is listening to this or watching this is really fucking honest with themselves. I do this I give talks quite often, right? And quite often it's to a mainstream audience. I'll start these talks. I'll be like, put your hand up if you're, identify as an addict.
None
very
going up,
rarely
right?
does a hand go up, or you get like some like super excited dude who's real
Yeah,
fresh into like
me.
his sobriety. He's like, yeah, me. You're like, cool, man. Honoring you, bro. Hell yeah. Fuck yeah, dope.
Yeah.
But yeah, like no hands will go up. Yeah, cool. Okay. And like eventually I'll get to a question. I'll be like, cool. So put your hand up if you know that you have something in your life that you lean on, that you turn to, when you just don't really want to be in the full experience of life, when shit's a little bit stressful, when there's some feelings that you don't really want to feel, when things are about overwhelming, and every single hand in the room will go up. And I'm like, cool. So what's the fucking difference between when I asked you if you had an addiction and what I've just spoken about now? The only separation between those two is the stigma that you have attached to that word addiction. And it's a spectrum. Of course it's a spectrum. There's a full spectrum. Like I took it to the, level 10.
Yep. Went leveled up.
Yeah, I took it to level 10, 100%. But, there's a lot of people that, like I'd say food is probably one of the biggest addictions on this planet. We spoke about this, like overworking.
Massive one.
Huge. And that ties in with addiction to stress. Yeah, I can find myself in that too. 100% still to this day I can find myself in that.
And so when we look at addiction, so would you say it's you've said medicine, which I think was awesome because and it ties into what you said a moment ago, where it's almost something more than what the addiction actually is. It's you're trying to fill a gap or distract yourself essentially.
Yeah. So what it actually is for most people, it's actually their solution.
Yep.
It's just a really fucked up and maladaptive solution. It's helping. If you ask anyone, like, why do you eat the way that you eat? Why do you engage with porn in the way that you engage with porn? Why are you such a people pleaser? Why do you work as many hours as you do? Like, ask them what they get from that. A lot of the time, if you ask someone, if they say like food or if they have a drink, they go, I get home, I have a drink, I have a glass of wine, it just helps me unwind. Like, okay. Helps you unwind, so you find a bit of peace, a bit of comfort, helps you to soothe, helps you to pacify. It's like now we're starting to figure out that this is actually giving you something outside of like just like looking at that substance, right? So it's like, okay, so you've got a problem like unwinding. You've got a problem just being still. You've got a problem with, doing nothing.
Do you get much pushback on that with people not accepting that, where they're like, no, it's just, it helps me unwind, but it's, because I feel like even with people that I work with, it takes some people a while to accept.
Oh, 100%. Like some people just aren't ready and willing to look at that, and that's fine, that's cool. I'm not speaking to those people really, that's true. Like if you're totally happy living the life that you're living, your behavioural patterns that play out, whether they're adaptive or maladaptive. And for most people, like a lot of these patterns aren't creating enough pain in their life for them to actually want to even doing anything about them. So that's where I sort of talk about this tipping point, this line in the sand. Like I'm forever grateful that I chose something that really truly like fucked up my shit so badly. I really had no choice. It was like I will die or I can heal. Like that was my ultimatum. But for someone who you maybe is the overworker, like what's their rock bottom? Like maybe like the wife and kids end up leaving. Maybe that's their wake up call. Maybe they hit some immense burnout, hit a wall, have a heart attack. I don't know, whatever that is, or like they just like become so disconnected from themselves they don't know who they are outside of work. Maybe that's a wake-up call, but something like that can be a lot harder to hit that breaking point to actually see that, oh shit, this isn't serving me anymore. And there's a lot of people that, as well, these adaptations, ultimately these are survival adaptations, I can talk a bit more on that later, they work really fucking well for them. They've got them into some really successful situations.
Yeah, it's not shining the light to say, look, this isn't working. You're like,
Totally.
well, look at the results that I've got, dude.
100%. And then so I'm like, but at what cost? Do you know what I mean? At what cost? It's like, cool, you might have the, multi-million-dollar company. What's your relation? Like, are you happy? I know a fuckload of people that have millions of dollars in the bank account that are miserable. Absolutely miserable. They don't know who the fuck they are outside of work. They don't have a relationship with themselves. They don't have any friends. They don't have anyone to share their success with, to share their money with, their abundance with, their fucking toys and all that stuff with. The family's been left behind. They don't even know their own fucking kids. The wife's, probably running off fucking someone else because, he's in the office for 17 hours a day.
The thought of that makes me angry.
Yeah.
Like, really makes me angry. I think about it a lot because a lot of the men that I work with, which is why I'm grateful that you're here to sort of speak more into the addiction side of
things. I do swear, but I hope
that's
all right.
No, mate, that's fine. For anyone who gets offended, I've sworn enough to. They've already left. They're cool. Gone.
Perfect.
Like, this is a good show, but man, he's a foul mouth dude. But I think about it a lot because I've similar to you, worked with a lot of high net worth individuals whose family, partners may have left them, or their kids don't talk to them.
Yeah.
They're extremely overweight and don't have a good quality of life because of energy. They don't know who they are or what they stand for. They're just like, this is what I get up and do every day, and without that, I'm nobody. I'm nothing. And we see it with athletes, we see it with business owners, we see it with even parents to a degree when the kids leave, right?
Mums especially.
Yep, all the time. And it's like, that's a one role that you're playing in your life. But you need to consider what you want financially, what you want in your relationships, what you want from a career standpoint, how you want your mindset, your physical, all of those things are important to consider because they all lean on each other.
Yeah.
You may have a focal point at different stages in your life, but we've already, how old are you?
35.
Yeah, I'm similar age.
Yeah.
So it's like we've been through so many phases of our life already. It's like the 20s, we were drinking booze and getting amongst it. You're on prescription drugs. I was on whatever I could get my hands on. And then now I've come out the other side. I'm in a different phase where I'm like, that was naughty. I don't want a part of that anymore. I'm in a new phase. And for a lot of people, they don't think that far enough ahead. It's like we can look back for experience around what we did like, what we didn't like, and we can look forward to the future for inspiration. And it's within that inspiration, like, what kind of relationships do you want to have? All those things that we've both touched on, what do you want those to look like? Because now is the time to decide, and the actions that you take moving forward are going to...
And I think, I think we kind of touched on this even before we started the podcast. It's like, you don't know what you don't know. Like, I didn't even know this world that I now live existed. I had no fucking clue. I didn't know there was anything outside of this box or this frame or this conditioned experience that I had been led to believe was my pathway. I was told, basically, I got decent marks at school. I played rugby. The expectation was that I went to university. I think I did maybe like 90% of a marketing and management degree before I ended up in rehab.
Oh, right. Blame it on the marketing degree.
And then the expectation was like you leave university and you go get the corporate job. And I think, it's different for everybody, what that condition experience is. For a lot of people, particularly I see in Aussie, it's like, there's a lot of tradies. And again, there's a culture that comes with that. It's like this expected culture. It's like you work fucking Monday to Friday. Friday, everyone gets hyped because they're like, oh yeah, I get to finally fucking leave this experience that I fucking hate every day because it just pays the bills. I'm just like, I'm just ticking a box to get some money in my account to make sure I can pay my rent and have enough money left over to get on the piss and maybe get a bag. And then wake up Sunday hung as fuck, eat some shit food, and drag my ass back to work on a Monday. I didn't know there was a world outside of that.
I'm with you.
Literally didn't know there was a world outside of that. And I shared with you, it wasn't until there's always been this innate inner fucking rebel in me. Like, I'm just like a massive fuck the system kind of dude. That's who I am. And I always question why. And that's kind of what got me into this. I'll expand more on like the sort of under threads and undercurrents of addiction. But I always question why. Like, why? I don't want to do that. It doesn't, like, that looks boring as shit. What, trying to, like,
Yep.
just save all my money or work 40 hours a week to live my best life after 65? Like, what? No. But again, like, I wasn't surrounded by the people that I am now. Like, I wasn't surrounded by entrepreneurs. I wasn't surrounded by people that are running against the grain. I wasn't surrounded by people doing things differently. Like, the most contrasting person in my life was probably like my bro that left school early to become a chippy, and he cracked it. Like, he was the one making more money than all of us. We're at uni racking up his student debt, and he's, on apprentice wages.
Killing it, living
killing
the
it.
dream.
And then eventually, he's got a very, very, very successful construction company back in NZ. But, that wasn't a world I was exposed to, and it wasn't until I shared with you, my dad passed away when I was about 26. And the two gifts he gave me, one inadvertently, he had a brain tumor. And inadvertently he gave the biggest gift he gave me was just like, your health is your wealth. He wasn't unhealthy, but he was very sedentary. Like, he didn't work out, didn't move his body. He had a very high stress job. And yeah, like, it kind of adds up. If you don't look after you, then, what are you going to expect? Something's going to break at some point in time. Unfortunately for him, it was, he left. And so that was, a big gift that came was like, your health is your wealth. And that sort of got me on this path of health and wellness, which led me to like where I am today. And the second piece was, like I said to you, we're having these conversations before he passed, and I think he wished he did things really differently. I think he wished he had lived a bit of a different life and a bit of a different experience. And he just like, Joe, just like do whatever the fuck makes you happy. That's it. Go and figure that out. But first and foremost, I had to figure out me. I had to figure out who the fuck I was.
Was that? Let's go back to figuring you out, and thanks for sharing that. And sorry. Feel lost, but as you said, there's a gift that comes from moments like that, and there's plenty of people who've had plenty of gifts rock up at their door, and they still are choosing not to open them.
Oh man, I could talk about that for ages. I call them gifts in strange wrapping paper. But it's like we're always getting the tickle, and if we don't listen to the tickle, we get the book, and if we don't listen to the book, we'll get the Mack truck coming through the door.
And it's not like when I think about it from the position I'm in now, where I've grown a lot and I've changed my perspective, and very similar to you, go after a different style of life, one that makes me happy. And if I don't like something, change it rather than just doing something because that's what was expected of me. I think about, and I want to tie this back to you, is you had these gifts rock up. What was it that made you prepared to listen to it at that point in time? Like, because there's going to be a lot of people who've, if they were to just take an hour to reflect on things that have happened in their life, they could see that, they could open that right now. So what made you ready? It's
such an individual experience. Like I get asked this all the time, and then we say this, when I'm presenting with my business partners as well. Like it's such an individual experience, and it's not something that someone can be kind of coached into or dragged into, or potentially even be mirrored back to themselves. It's something they need to be willing to ultimately look at and take some form of like real radical fucking self-responsibility. And like for me, it was just like a switch flicked. That's the only way I can explain it. It was like a switch flicked. For me, it was the second time I went back to rehab. I think I was 28. And I remember sitting at the end of if everyone that's listening has ever been to rehab, they'll know you get these fucking shitty single beds, The kind of beds you only get in these rehabilitation centres. I was sitting on the end of this bed and I was just like head in my hand, just like, how am I here again? How am I here again? And that moment for me, it was like, yeah, it was profound. It was pretty subtle, but it was very real and visceral in my body. It was just like, I'm done. Like I've done everything. I've done absolutely everything I possibly can to try and keep these things in my life, and I've done not a lot to try to keep them out. And it's killing me very slowly, but it is killing me. Surely this life of whatever you want to call this other fucking path, recovery, sobriety, healing, personal development, personal growth, whatever that journey is for you. I was just like, surely that can't be harder than the life I've created for myself right now. Like, choose my heart. And so I was like, cool, all right, I'm going to give this a crack. I'm going to go all in and see what I can make of it.
What were some things that you had to accept about yourself on that path to recovery?
I mean, first and foremost, just a full acceptance that I had a problem with drugs and alcohol. Was like step one was like, yeah, just this acceptance.
Was that hard?
So it was almost like a surrender. At that time, it really wasn't. It really wasn't. It was, it actually felt like a breath of fresh air. That's how I explain it. So it was like, my body actually finally let go. Like, instead of trying to hold on for to this old life, it was like, oh, no, I'm actually ready to let go of that.
And you fully believe that there is nothing that anyone could have said or done that would have helped you earlier?
No, nothing. I say this all the time. I get messages every single day by family members every single day. Mums, dads, partners. Hey, my son, daughter, husband, wife is in this experience. What can I do? I'm sorry. The hardest thing I have to tell them every single time is there is, I gotta expand on this a little bit, but ultimately in its shortest form, there's nothing you can do until they want to help themselves. You cannot help somebody that doesn't want to help themselves. Full stop. They're not receptive. They're not open to it. They're not there yet. They haven't hit that breaking point. It's a very individual experience. And all I say is what you can do is, number one, you can go and educate yourself on, addiction, full stop, like what it actually is, where it actually comes from, where it actually stems from, so that you can have a bit more understanding and compassion for whoever your loved one is that's going through that experience. And what you can do is also look after you. Go and do some work on you. Be that fucking lighthouse. Show whoever this person is in your life that this other world and realm of being and who they can be and become is actually possible. Because for so many people that are in that experience, we feel so isolated and so alone, and that there really isn't a lot of hope. And so even just to have a space that creates, just to hear somebody else's story. Like, I remember walking into rehab for the first time at 22, and just hearing some other people share similar fucked up stories. I was just like, oh my God, I'm not alone. Because I knew nothing about addiction back then. I'd never been exposed to anything like that. And so, I literally thought I was going to show up and give me some magic pill and send me on my way.
Yep.
You're done. Yeah, I'm sweet. I'm good. I'm healed. Yeah, no, not quite the case. Where was I going with that? Yeah, it was just to hear somebody else with share their own personal lived experience and have so many similarities. That eradicates so much shame. The undercurrent to so many people that do experience any form of addiction is shame. There's a lot of shame that comes with that, and that comes with the stigma attached to that as well, attached to that word. And so to hear somebody else, for you to share openly, share your heart, share vulnerably, share some of the fucked up, twisted shit that you've done, and then somebody next to you go, "Oh yeah, same." I've done
I've done that too.
Or
I did worse than that, man.
That times 10. Yeah, you're like, oh, wow, I'm with my people.
Yeah.
These guys get it.
What are some of the common forms or experiences that shame's attached to for people? If we could give some examples for anyone listening that can sit there and go, "Oh fuck, someone else has done that or holds that."
So explain that again, or ask that question.
So
again,
shame, you say, is an underlying in the currents for addiction. So what are some of the main pieces of shame that people hold on to, or examples of shame?
I think it's just they know that their behavior isn't socially acceptable, I guess, for want of a better word.
Yep.
And so they internalize it. It gets buried, it gets shoved down. So shame, like the difference between guilt and shame is guilt is I've done something bad, full stop, and it might remedy the thing that I've done that's bad.
Mm-hmm.
Shame is an internalization of guilt. So shame is like I've done something bad and I'm a bad person as a result of what I've done.
Yep.
So it's dependent on the particular behavior, and it's this internalization of I'm a bad person, which is a thread for so many people that I've worked with. It's like, and this is where we're getting to like core wounds, right? And this is really what I'm only ever working on with so many of my clients is actually figuring out what a lot of these core wounds are. But yeah, it's this the biggest piece I work on with a lot of my clients is the inner critic. I think a lot of people could relate to that. Like the inner critic is that shame runs so deep that internal narrative and voice is just like, you're a fucking piece of shit.
Yep.
And it's ultimately their driving force. It's actually what compels them and gets them to do things in a way, and just a very maladaptive survival response. For me, I remember having a mentor early on in my journey, and he looked at me and he's just like, "Drew, man, you need to be so much kinder to yourself, eh?" And like, this dude may as well have been talking Japanese to me. Like, it went so far over my head. Like, the words I didn't even understand what he was saying to me. And like, evidently, like that's been such a huge part of my journey is learning how to be in a relationship with me, learning actually how to like be my own best mate.
Mm.
We're the one person we spend the most time with, yet we're 99% of the time the one person in our lives we actually know the least about.
It's interesting to think about, because I would have assumed years ago when I was sort of introduced to that same concept that I would have been my own best mate, because there were moments where I'd think that I was a good person. 90% of the time I thought I was a shit person. I thought I was a bit of a pig. I was like, but no, I look after myself occasionally, so therefore I'm a good bloke and I know more about me than anyone else. But then I started thinking about how I spoke to myself, which seems like such a insignificant thing. However, it's the driving force behind everything. Everything. And when I speak to people about, like, I prime myself every day with how I want to think, how I want to act, and how I want to behave. And I've been doing that since 2014, and I'm still not conditioned to the level that I would like to be conditioned. Because you mentioned before the impact that it has on other people when addiction strikes or trauma strikes or bad behavior, whatever it is, strikes. That motivates me to want to be better in every single way, because I don't want to, one, put myself through that because I care deeply about myself. And secondly, I don't want to put someone else through that because, as you said, there's not a single thing they can say or do to stop the train wreck that I could have potentially been going on. So for anyone listening, even if you're complacent with your life and you're content, there is an opportunity to start thinking about a compelling future, something that does excite you, that makes you want to
100%
grow and better. And
it's just like, what else is there? Like, just start to question things. That's what I say to people. Start to question things. Start to kind of just observe yourself. Sounds a bit weird and woo, but like, just kind of observe yourself and be like, is this what I want from life? Am I content? Am I happy? Like, you don't have to. And a lot of my clients that I work with don't hit that stage like that. I don't actually work with, someone that would have been at that level. Like that takes, you need a detox, you need a rehab, you need, that's not generally the type of person I actually work with.
Yep.
There's a level of stability in their life, but like they just hit some sort of, like their breaking point's just different. And, for whatever reason, like some X, Y, and Z's unfolded and they're like, I don't want to live this way anymore. I'm sick of this. I'm bored. It's the same shit on repeat. Like I'm sitting on the hamster wheel. And so, yeah, like you said, like if you just are looking at your life and you're feeling like you're sitting on that hamster wheel, you don't really know what to do. Like, fuck, you come to the right place, you're listening to the right podcast, you're just the fact that you're listening to this podcast shows that you want more from life. Do you know what I mean? Yep. Like, just the fact that you're actually willing to chuck on a podcast of this caliber on your way to work or while you're at the gym and actually listen to some humans that are doing something fucking different shows that there is a part of you that wants something different. Just doesn't know how the fuck to get there yet. And so I always talk about like know, do, be. It's all very well to like know something. You can read all the fucking books you want. You can listen to all the podcasts you want. But if you're not actually putting that knowledge into action, it's meaningless. It really means nothing. There's a lot of people, unfortunately, out there that go, like, they love to go from know to teach.
Yeah.
They might know a thing and then they'll try to teach a thing. And they've bypassed the actual doing of it, and therefore the embodiment, the becoming it, the being it. And that's something I'm really passionate about in the way that I teach as well. Is like I've qualified in numerous different modalities and practices that I help my clients with to move through different experiences. But I'll give them whatever comes up in session. I'll then give them what I call like embodiment practices. Like, here's your practice that's actually going to help you integrate what we've just learned. And that's where the rubber hits the road, That's where the needle shifts. It's in the doing of this shit that starting to do things a little bit differently, integrating, can be a small, like integrate a morning routine. Like integrate some sort of a morning practice. I don't know. It could, for you, it might, I don't know where anyone's at in this podcast. I don't know what your like sort of average demographic is, but just do something a little bit more fucking wholesome and a little bit different.
Well, the way I look, because I think intent's such an important part. Like, for what purpose would I integrate a morning routine? For majority of our audience, high performing men, and the way I look at it, it's like warming up for the gym. So I look at, my morning routine, while it has a framework, is different depending on what the day looks like.
Totally.
So, there's no point going into the gym not warming up at all, because you're not going to be able to maximize your output. There's also no point going into the gym and warming up your legs when you're doing an upper body session. It just doesn't make sense. So if you've got a busy day where you're talking to a lot of clients, for example, it might be coaching day, or it might be sales day, or it might be whatever the day is, do specific warm-ups or routines in the morning to have you primed so you can perform at your optimal level. You can be the individual that will add value to whatever space or interaction that you're having.
Yeah, I mean, at its core, what I say to most people is create a morning routine that creates self-awareness.
Yeah.
That sets, like you said, sets an attention. You're spending a bit of time with yourself to actually just be with yourself, to move out of autopilot, which most people are running in 24/7. They'll wake up, grab their phone, have a scroll. Already their energy's dropping because they're seeing Sally's in Fiji and you're fucking got to go to work, and then you open the news and it's all doom and fucking gloom, and you kind of get slump out of bed and you got to go after work, and like, again, it's all just autopilot. It's like, what if you actually woke up and you took some time for yourself to tune into you, to figure out, who you want to be for the day, what you want to be for the day, set some intention, and remind yourself of potentially maybe your goals, who you're aspiring to be, what you want to embody, and move through the day with that. I call it like putting on armor. Like, if I'm starting my day with that, I'm starting my day, it's like recharging your phone. I'm starting at 100.
Yep.
Shit's always going to happen, but like, I'm only going to come down to maybe like 60 or 70, If I'm starting my day by opening a phone and having a scroll, I'm already at 0. There's only one way down, and that's when we're much more susceptible as well to then reaching outside of ourselves for these creature comforts to help support me and just deal with life.
Can we talk about like genetics and environment? So rolling on from what you've just said there, like for me, a big part of that is environment, like creating an environment that makes you want to, you know, build towards a compelling future and a great life, as opposed to leaning on those medicines, as we call it.
Environment is fucking everything. It's such a key component and such a big piece of what I teach and preach is, creating an environment that's conducive to the life that you want to live and the person that you want to become. You know, it's something that I think I don't often give enough credit to. Like, I intentionally moved from New Zealand to the Gold Coast because I'd found my people. And, like, my environment's everything. And that's not just where I live, but it's the people I surround myself, probably actually more so the people I surround myself with. You know, it's the oldest, like, personal development quote, old Jim Rohn.
Jim Rohn is a man.
You are the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. Audit your inner circle. Like, if you're looking around your inner circle and the 5 people you're spending the most time with are the same people you've been, like, fucking drinking or partying with for the last 20 or 30 years, having the same bullshit conversations that you've been on repeat for, like, you know, the last 20 years. Is that really serving you? Is it elevating you? Is it helping you to grow and expand? Or does it do you feel contracted? What helps you to feel expanded? Like, who are those people? Go and find those people.
It's when you say that, because I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I'm probably going to get educated here, but I really struggle to believe that addiction is anything more than environment. Because I know when I used to smoke, I used to drink recreational drug use, and I smoked for years, and then I just stopped. And when I made the decision to stop, I changed my environment. I tried to quit smoking so many times, and then I'd find myself back at a pub on a Friday, and you'd have a few beers, and then it's like, mate, can I bum a smoke?
Yeah.
Then I'd have a smoke, and then I'm like, oh, fuck it, I've already started, I'll just go buy another pack. And then the next morning I'm waking up, I'm like, damn it. And I just kept going through that cycle because I was in that environment.
Yeah, for sure.
The moment that I removed myself from that environment, I haven't had a cigarette for like 10 years.
Yeah.
I still smell it, and I'm like, yummy. But because I'm not in that environment, I'm in a completely different environment around people that if I were to pull out a durry, they'd be like, what are you doing?
what are you up to, bro?
What is going on? Like, and so for me, when I hear about addiction, there's, as you said, there is this spectrum. I completely understand that. But for me, when I look at individuals that talk about it, I'm like, okay, well, the environment you're in has you perfectly set up to do that.
100%.
And I'm probably going to get hate for that, but I'm also open to being educated on it because
I mean, I've got 2 trains of thoughts. I would say, you're spot on. You know, I would start with environment.
Yep. You
can't heal within an environment that's ultimately inviting in those same behavioral patterns that you're wanting to be free from. You cannot. It's not possible. And so environment's usually the first thing I'll look at with a lot of my clients. Is like, let's start with environment. And I guess my question for you would be, did you notice, like, when you change your environment and stop smoking, was there something else that maybe popped up that you turned to that maybe that energy was focused into?
Training.
Okay, there we go.
Definitely.
Yeah, right.
And with the hindsight that I have now, I still remember I just was almost like a social anxiety. I really struggled to connect and communicate because I didn't know much about many things. All I wanted to do at that time was be a professional athlete. Completely, way of smoking and drinking, dickhead. but so when people would talk,
most professional athletes,
I was just normal. But as I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about this, I'm like, I'd sit in conversations and people were talking about things that I had no idea about. So I didn't feel like I could contribute to that conversation, and I felt kind of worthless in that situation. So the easiest way is like, I'll just go bung a smoke and go sit outside, or I'll go get the next round of beers.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I'd come back and I feel like I had something to offer.
Yeah.
Which is weird when I think about it, but
So again, you're getting something from that, right? Like you're coming in, you've got the beers,
Yeah,
everyone's
there
giving
you
you a
go,
pat on the
boys,
back.
yeah.
Ah, Lockie, yeah, fuck, Lockie's a good dude. Yeah, he's got a round.
Yeah.
Love that. You're getting a hit. You're getting love. You're getting approval,
It's like
right?
that like button on Instagram.
100%. No different. And so this is where, like, cool, yes, environment can change some things, but it doesn't go far enough. Because what I experience is that if people are only changing environment, and you just take away that one thing that's been your crutch or your vice or your, whatever the thing that you've leant on, your coping mechanism for so long, what you start to notice is like just playing a giant game of whack-a-mole.
Yep.
You hit one down and something else is going to pop up somewhere else in your life. That energy was still going to, you're still going to have the compulsion in your body that wanted or didn't really want to be with self is still there. Yep. So it will find another way to kind of shove that discomfort or dis-ease down. So this, I guess, is kind of circles into my whole view on addiction, is that it started at rehab, 22. It was a 12-step based rehab. So, like, if we want to go back in addiction, way back when, and still in the legal system, it's treated as ultimately a moral failing. Like, you're just a shit person and you're making bad choices. And unfortunately, it's still seen that by a lot of people. Like, you're just flawed, you're weak.
Yep.
And you're a stain on society. So, okay, yeah, maybe. That doesn't feel true to me. Then the 12-step narrative came in, and that came with a bit more compassion. So that was a disease-based model of addiction. So it was like, you've just got a disease for which there's no known cure, and we'll give you the tools to help you manage that disease. And in that, I laugh with another addiction specialist over in the UK that I'm mates with. We used to laugh about this all the time. Like, there was a part of me that fucking loved that, because that part went, yeah, let's run with that, because you don't have to look any deeper.
Yeah, that's...
You don't have to go any deeper than that. You've just got a disease. Is it? And so it was like, oh, cool, I've just got a disease for which there's no known cure. But again, in my body, I was like, that doesn't feel fucking true. It sounds like a cop-out. It sounds like you actually don't know. You're just regurgitating what you've been told to tell me. So I guess, fast forward, ended up back in rehab, 28. Ended up, I'm trying to figure out this timeline. What got me to rehab? So I ended up in the health and wellness industry. Had a reasonably successful business in that when I was on. Like, when I was on, I was on.
When you're on,
when I was like working and switched on and engaged, I was great. I had quite a successful health and wellness business. I ended up winning all expenses for the company I was working with at the time. I ended up winning this all expenses paid trip to Las Vegas.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, anyway, that was an absolute blowout. And that was sort of like the start of my final demise. Got me back into rehab, switch flicked, and started with all I kind of knew, which was the 12 steps. And I've said this openly, like, I've got no problem with the 12 steps. The 12 steps to start with definitely saved my life and set me on that path and that road. But there were some pieces of the 12 step that didn't resonate with me. And the biggest piece that didn't resonate was this disease-based model. It just didn't feel true. What I did resonate with was the dis-ease that I felt in my body. I felt a lot of discomfort in my body. I found it very hard to sit fucking still. I was that wriggler. I've got a mate that calls a lot of addicts natural born leg jigglers, which I love, the natural born leg jiggler. And so I definitely felt that. And so anyway, yeah, I just kind of set that path, and I was really grateful as well and thankful that the company that I was aligned with at the time had a really heavily weighted value system on personal development. So I was also exposed to a lot of different ways, like different experiences of personal development as outside of that scope of 12-step.
Yep.
So anyway, I ended up in this workshop. Shout out to Preston Smiles and Alexi Panos.
Oh yeah.
Legends. They are legends.
Is that the bridge one you did?
Yeah. I worked with P for quite some time. Amazing man. Fucking, yeah, dope human. yeah, went to the bridge experience, bro, and there was one. It's like simple practice. I won't explain the practice. Like if you have the great fortune of being able to step into one of these rooms, I truly believe it to be the most transformative experiential workshop on the planet. But yeah, one of these practices we did, it fucking cracked me. I always have, up until that point, I'd always said I'm really okay with my dad dying, or I just haven't been in the right space or environment to actually feel it yet. And this particular practice just fucking cracked me. I was bawling my eyes out, absolute weeping. And I was just having this huge, like, cathartic release. And as much as I was crying and bawling my eyes out, like, you know, when it started to pass, I actually started to feel more free. I started to feel lighter. Actually felt really fucking good. And I was like, holy shit. Like, there was just a spark that went off. It was like, this has got fucking nothing to do with a disease. And this has got everything to do with my inability to feel and process my emotions. And so I started following that thread. And that's what led me down what I call, like, the trauma train.
The trauma
train. Choo choo. All aboard. But again, like, that word trauma it's such a buzzword in the space these days, and a lot of people, it's very misunderstood. And that's why we intentionally don't actually use the word trauma in a lot of our front-facing shop for our recovery program. Because of that misunderstanding. Like, and for me as well, I would have said, if you looked at my childhood from the outside looking in, I would have been like, bro, my life was cushy. Like, where's the trauma there? Like, I was loved, parents were together, well off, upper middle class, fucking white, upbringing. Anyway, for whatever reason, it just felt so true. It felt so right. I started following people like Gabor Mate. He's like the fucking goat when it comes to like addiction and trauma. And his ethos is like, let's stop looking at the addiction and let's start looking at the pain. What's underneath that? What's creating that compulsion? That's creating that desire or that necessity for someone to reach for something from outside of themselves in order for them to make them feel, give them an altered experience, ultimately. I need something from outside of myself in order to make me feel better or not feel as much, as the case may be in most situations. And so, yeah, continue to follow that thread, and I was like, fuck, this makes so much sense. Like, this is actually everything. Why is no one speaking about this? This just makes sense. It's not the drugs, the alcohol, the porn, the overworking, the people pleasing, the procrastination, whatever that behavioral trait may be. That's just a symptom of a much deeper rooted issue. And so, again, trauma. I talk about it as like imprints of the past. I love using the word like undigested life experiences.
Undigested. I like that one.
Life experiences, trapped emotions, stored feelings gone unfelt. Just these, we've all had experiences that, particularly in men, we've all had particular experiences that there's been an overwhelming sense of emotion, of feeling, that no one has fucking taught us how to be with, what to do with. There's also a very unhealthy narrative that, boys don't cry, men don't share, men don't talk, men don't open up about their feelings. We don't expose ourselves vulnerability like that. And so we'll shove it down. We'll continue to shove all this shit fucking down. Down. And all that stuff wants to do is this energy, is emotion I talk about is equals energy, emotion. Like, this stuff wants to come out. It wants to be processed. But again, we're not given the tools. We're not shown how to actually feel. No one shows us how the fuck to feel, really. And so what we do is as the stuff starts to bubble up, that's when we'll like reach for whatever our coping mechanism is, whatever our vice is, whatever our behavioral trait or adaptation is that helps us to pacify, self-soothe, run, hide and escape. And so, yeah, I kept following that thread, and it just started making sense. And yeah, I mean, I guess that's the essence and ethos of what I now do, teach and preach, is that let's stop looking at the thing. The thing isn't the problem. Let's stop villainizing the symptom, and let's go and look at what's underneath that. What's the driving force there? And ultimately, what are those core wounds that all of us have, just not a lot of us are willing to look at.
Yeah. How would anyone know that it's becoming an addiction? Like, at what point would you, even from your experience, know that it was an addiction and not just like a quick passing phase?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if it's causing problems in your life, then there's probably something to look at there. I think it's really as simple as that. If it's causing problems for you or the people around you, there's probably an issue. And that can be for, like I said, man, this can be behavioral traits. People pleasing is so fucking common.
Yep.
These are So what we're talking about here is actual survival adaptations. So going back to trauma, unfortunately, so I sort of, there's different facets and realms and worlds of trauma, but the two that are most spoken about and most poignant for probably people that are listening are, number one's acute trauma. And unfortunately, a lot of people have experienced acute trauma. That would be things like sexual abuse, physical abuse, verbal abuse growing up, bullying, things like this. Is a very, they're particularly when we're younger, they're literal perceived threats to our life. And so we adapt and respond in a particular way to find that safety or to find that love. And that works as a kid or when we're younger, or even as, in our teens and in our 20s, but when we sort of become grown-ass men, they usually become quite maladaptive adaptations. What is also mostly prevalent, and I truly believe this is sort of like 90% of all trauma comes from what we call developmental trauma. And developmental trauma, it's actually a lot harder and more difficult to see. And like acute trauma, I love working with it because it's actually a lot easier to work with because there's a very distinct moment in time that someone has an imprint and potentially a memory of that we can really just go to and work with and work on. Developmental trauma is much more subtle. The simplest definition of developmental trauma is just not getting your basic human needs met in the way that you wanted and needed them met as a child. And so this is where it can get a little bit more subtle and a little bit more confusing because that's just your lived experience. So if that's just your lived experience, it's hard to see that as that having an impact on your life. Does that make sense?
So it's more like the interpretation of things, right?
100%. So for me, just to like kind of wrap this up and give someone an example, for me, like this is where everything started falling into place for me and made sense. I was like, fuck, this makes all the sense in the world. When I started like peeling back these layers, I was like, okay, what I started to realize and recognize and have had conversations with my mum about this as well, so I know this to be quite true, is that mum had 2 miscarriages before me. She was 40 years old when she had me. As children, we're tiny little sponges. We're like the living emanation of a felt sense. Yep. Like all we can do is feel. And actually all we can also do, we can't regulate our own nervous system. We have a complete inability to regulate our own nervous system. So we regulate and attune to our primary caregiver, which is 90% of the time is our mothers. So we're ultimately feeling everything that our mum's feeling.
Wow.
Yeah, it's fucking crazy. This is some like Sigmund Freud shit.
Yeah. We come down the path of psychology.
Yeah. And so, you could imagine my mum's 40 years old. She's pregnant again for the 3rd time. She's experiencing like deep levels of fear, terror. She's scared that she's going to lose me, that she'll never be a mother. I know for a fact that she didn't have the support that she wanted. She was living in Christchurch. All her family was up in Auckland in New Zealand. Mm-hmm. She was probably just genuinely overwhelmed and stressed. So her nervous system was extremely dysregulated. And I felt that through different practices. So I came out 2 days late. I didn't want to, like, I didn't breach, like I didn't turn around. I was a cesarean.
Yep.
Like my whole energy, like I didn't want to come out into this fucking
Fuck
world.
this, man.
Fuck this. Fuck this. That's what I'm feeling. That's what's out there. No way. Why would I want to come out and engage in that? And so the other thing that I really felt, and again, there's no malicious intent from anyone's parent to impart this stuff onto their kids. None at all. It's all completely unconscious. But we feel it nonetheless, and we can't separate what's ours, what's theirs from what's ours. So we'll give it a story to make it mean something about us, to make it make sense. And so I also had this experience and this current that I felt from my mum of like, I need you. That was what I was constantly feeling, was this like, I need you. I need you. Like, I need you to survive. I need you. I need you. Which was really fucking confusing, because ultimately what it felt like I was exposed to was like the definition of conditional love. And so tied into two things, created this core wound of like, I'm not loved as I am. I've got to be something other than me in order to be loved and received. And it also created an extremely dysregulated nervous system right from the day I was born. And so if you've got an extremely dysregulated nervous system, it's very hard to just be fucking still. Mm-hmm. You're always on red alert. You're basically, these are what we call survival adaptations. You're doing everything that you can to seek, again, unconsciously. We're always, particularly as kids as well, we're always trying to seek safety or love. And so my adaptation was seeking love, because that's what I thought I had, like, that's how I had thought I had to show up in order to survive. Does that make sense? It's like, I need that love from everybody else.
And so did that make you a people pleaser then?
Fucking 100%. And it showed up the most in my intimate relationships. So if you want to look at your shit, go and look at like the patterns of your intimate relationships. So I would basically always end up in relationships with women that would keep me at arm's distance, woman that would, I feel I'd have to prove myself to, woman that would give me a maybe. And as much as I fucking hated it, unconsciously there was a part of me that's going, oh, this is familiar. Oh, this is mummy. Of this, mummy. Yeah. Which sounds really fucked up and twisted, but this is actually how we're 95%
we go where we're
of us
comfortable, right?
Are behaving. We're seeking out familiarity unconsciously. This is how the ego works. The ego keeps us safe. Its job in the psyche is literally to keep us safe. Unfortunately, how it keeps us safe is by seeking out familiar, seeking out what is familiar, seeking out familiarity, and we create these patterns of behavior as a result of our upbringing that we just think is us. We think that's who we are. We think that's our identity. I was the ultimate people pleaser, man. I was the ultimate nice guy, constantly like tracking every situation, every room, every scenario I was in, every conversation. Like if you were like, hey bro, like, how are you? Like, what do you need? And be like, who do you want me to be? Like, what answer do you want me to give you to make sure that you approve of me and love me and fucking validate me?
I feel like there's a lot of people living like that.
Dude, it's rife. It's rife. And particularly for men as well. There's a lot of fucking nice guys out there that wear that nice guy mask.
So give me some substance, man. Like what do you really love?
Yeah.
What do you stand for?
But I understand that as well. And this is where we have to bring in a bit of compassion. It's like, I get that. Like that was my mask. That was literally like if I wasn't getting that love or that validation, it felt like I was dying. Mm-hmm. Like I don't know if anyone's watched there was a Friends reunion.
I haven't watched it.
I can't remember who's the actor that plays Chandler. Is it Matt?
Yeah.
Not Matt. No, it's not Matt. Anyway, the guy that plays Chandler. So the Friends reunion came out, and this was before he came out openly talking about his journey with addiction. Yep. And I was watching this Friends reunion, and I was like, this dude, fuck, he's been going through some shit. I can just read it. I can see it from a fucking mile away.
Yep.
And there's one thing he said that I was like, fuck, there it is. He said, if I cracked a joke or made a joke or said a line that was meant to get a laugh and it didn't get the laugh that I wanted or needed, it felt like I was going to die. I was like, there's the wound right there. Like, no wonder you ended up, walking that path of addiction, because that wound was so painful. You needed something to ultimately keep you above those flames of these things that we don't know how to be with. We don't know how to feel. We don't know how to process and how to navigate.
So my way of thinking now is that if someone's listened to this far through, they're probably well aware that there's some stuff they need to work on.
Yeah, for sure.
Up until this point, if you've never been exposed to a conversation like this and you maybe were unaware of why you were looking for certain medicines or vices, it's now in your hands on whether you're going to do something or you're going to continue on the same path, ultimately. And it comes back to that, what we've spoken about a number of times throughout this conversation, radical responsibility, or just continue putting your head in the sand.
Yeah.
What are the next steps for someone if they wanted to work with you, for example, if they're like, man, I love what Drew's about. I love his way of understanding addiction, your lived experience. How can they go one step further now?
I mean, if they personally want to work with me, I mean, I just say just literally like slide into my message box.
Slide in.
Slide
We're
on
all comfortable with that now, aren't we?
I love it. And that's where most of my clients come from. I actually don't know where they come from. They drop out of the fucking sky.
Yep.
They follow me. They've been watching me for a while, and they, at some point in time, hit that breaking point that we spoke of, and they reach out. And because I genuinely give a fuck, like I give a lot of fucks to these people, and I'm very engaged in my inbox, that like I'll just voice message back. I'm like, hey, what's going on? Like, how can I help? And they're shocked. They're like, oh, whoa, there's like a human that gives a fuck. Yeah. Which I find
It's
sad because unfortunately, there are so many people that
are lonely and don't have.
Well, yeah, like that they're just out to fucking grab someone's money, or they're, whatever. Like I'm not gonna bag too many people out, but I could. Like I fucking genuinely care. Like I take a lot of time to just point people in the right directions. And I'll be the first one to say, like, if we're not a fit, I know I'm connected with so many people that will be, one of them will be the right fit.
Yep.
And I'll point you in the right direction. If I know for a fact that like we're not meant to be working together, I'll lead you in the right direction. So yeah, I mean, you could slide into my message box. We've got, I work with two of Australia's leading addiction and trauma experts. We partnered up 2 years ago and created, my old group program used to be called Line in the Sand. So we turned that into a company.
Nice.
So Line in the Sand Proprietary Limited. We spent 18 months curating and recording the core content, which has become a 12-week program.
Yep.
So that's also an incredible place to start. I've got 1 million resources in the link in my bio on my Instagram, which I'm sure you'll attach to show notes and all of that. But just start somewhere. Start somewhere, and it starts with that I'm done. Again, like I said, that's different for everybody. It starts with I'm done, and actually I don't truly believe it's possible to fully heal without some sort of a guide or a program or a system that's going to help you sort of mirror back to some of the things that are really truly unconscious, that we just can't see on our own.
Yep.
I know that you've probably had that experience yourself. I'm sure you've got your own mentors and teachers and coaches and whatever it is that...
I was literally on the phone with a client before this, and he had this moment where he got to go, I told you so. And I was like, you motherfucker. Because we've been working together for about 5 years, and there was this court case, and I was like, mate, don't go down that route. I've seen it tear so many people apart, my dad included. And he's like, no. And then he's like, sometimes you just don't know what it feels like until you go through it yourself. And he's like, now he's been helping me with a matter,
Mm.
and he's like, mate, told ya.
Yeah.
And I was like, fair play.
Yeah, I mean, I
and
call it a Sherpa, eh? Like just having a Sherpa.
Well, and I can see, I use every tool in the book.
Yeah.
I journal, I think, I read, all of that sort of stuff. And I'm very self-aware.
Mm.
And I still have people that I pay to coach me, but sometimes I'm very fortunate, as you would be as well, the people that you have in your life.
Oh, 100%.
Sometimes they can point out a blind spot that someone else has missed it.
My partner does it all the time.
Yeah, same. So, but it's whether you're prepared to listen to it or not. And I think that comes back to one thing that stood out as that you said at the beginning is just learn to question things. So even when old bud gave me that advice a couple of months ago, I should have asked myself, why would he be giving me that advice? What am I not seeing? I didn't do that.
Yeah.
And
was getting curious, and this is something that I love to kind of hammer home, and it's something that I've been implementing a lot with my clients recently. It's becoming really popular in the world of realms of sort of psychotherapy. Is something called IFS, which is internal family systems. And so ultimately what internal family systems as a modality helps us to see is that like we all have parts. You often speak about, I've got this part, right? You've probably heard it from clients all the time. There's this part of me that's, that's the people pleaser. Or there's part of me that I'm always fucking procrastinating. It pisses me off. Or there's part of me that, yeah, like, man, I drink, I drink 4, 5, 6 beers at night, and it's
Savage.
just, but I don't like it. I don't like that I keep doing it. And the biggest problem is that a lot of us have really fucking like tumultuous relationships with these parts, where we actually have quite often we'll find quite a deep hatred towards these parts.
Yep.
and what we'll find is that if we're meeting these parts with a hate, we're just, it's like the old adage, what we resist persists. We're just going to accentuate more of the same. And so it's like, how can we actually get curious about these parts? How can we start to engage with these parts in a way that is, as I said, getting a little bit curious, looking at them with intrigue, and even starting to hold a bit, this sounds really weird, but holding a dialogue with some of these parts and starting to be like, hey, like, why are you here? What are you doing? How do you serve me? And what we'll actually find is that most of these parts have been created from like a really fucking young age to ultimately protect us. So under the sort of like IFS frame is they break it up into, you have your what do they call it? The managers, which are like proactive parts that help you to, again, stay above the flames of the feels of what they call the exiled parts. So the exiled parts are the shit that like we bury real deep. We don't want to look at, we don't want to feel, we don't want to go close to, because they feel big, scary, overwhelming, too much. And so the managerial roles will come in, and they're like the managerial parts are like the people pleasers, the procrastinators. They're like they look good on the surface, and they serve us to a certain extent. But again, at some point in time, there's a tipping point where they actually just become really maladaptive, and they don't work for us at all. They're actually taking away from us. And we have the firefighters, and the firefighters are the like reactive parts that are like, whoa, like coming real quick when something's feeling a little bit too much. And those are kind of those like addictive responses. They're like reaching out for like the quick fix, the quick hit, whether it's like the work or the gaming or the porn or the drink or the the smoke, whatever it is. It's like that quick hit that's like, oh, no, we'll shove that down. And so what we'll start to realize is that if we actually start to talk to some of these parts, you'll realize that they have actually been put in place to protect you and to keep you safe from a lot of the shit that was just way too much for you to be with when you were, however old you were, whenever that imprint was created. And you actually find that a lot of these parts, they don't actually like the role that they're playing either. They're kind of bored. They're kind of tired of playing the same old role. And so when you take them through this process, it's so fascinating. It's really fucking cool to witness. They hold this dialogue with this part, and they actually start to build a really different relationship with this part. And you might find that, say, like the inner critic or the part of you that really like beats you up and kind of tears you down.
Yep.
You know, it's helped you to kind of play small, because if you were to actually stand out, you know, the story might be that whatever, there's a story around like actually reaching your full potential, and that's not safe, and that's somewhere in point in time you created that belief.
Yep.
And so it's kept you safe in the sense that it's kept shutting you down, helping you to play small, and doesn't want you to make these big moves.
Yep.
And you start to realize, okay, wow, cool. Actually, that's really fascinating. Like, hey, thanks. Like, I appreciate you for like keeping me safe in the way that you have up until this point. But you don't really help me anymore.
Time to bugger off.
So, like, what would help for you to either take a back seat, or do you want a new role? Do you want a new job to play? And you'll find these parts are like, fuck yeah. What else could I? And you like start to talk to them. You find that they're like, yeah, they usually do the opposite. So usually like the inner critic becomes like the cheerleader.
Yes, all right.
And they're quite quickly. So again, it's a bit of a deeper process than how I'm explaining it. But we want this on a bodily experience, not just a cognitive experience as well. That's something I really want to hammer home. All of this shit is stored in our body. It's not stored upstairs.
Going back to what you said earlier, like you have to be able to feel things.
100%.
If you don't allow yourself to feel what success would feel like, or that self-acceptance or whatever it may be, is like logically we can read it anywhere. Yeah. We can listen to it anywhere. Yeah. But it's that whole embodiment piece that's missing for a lot of people.
Yeah, so in its shortest form, it's like, how can we actually just meet these parts with a little bit more kindness and compassion and understanding, and then actually welcome them and be like, hey, cool, like thanks for the work that you've done up until this point, but you don't really serve me anymore, so how can we create a different relationship and a dynamic? And I'm finding some really profound results coming through with implementing this with a few other modalities that I use. It's just switching.
Banging.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's really epic. Cool. Yeah, it's epic.
Drew Wilde, everyone. You can find him on all the socials. I'm going to put it all on the in the show notes there. And remember, if you got value from this episode, please share it. Reach out to Drew in the links in the show notes. But I've taken away so much from this one, and I honestly, there's episodes that I have where I get nervous going into it because I really don't understand a lot. I'll try and prep and do it. I do prep and I do a lot of that. But then when you're in the conversation and learning about processes and frameworks and perspectives, my brain's just going, loving it. But it's like, okay, this is now an area for me to explore more because it's just somewhere that I haven't gone. And I'm sure listeners will be the same, that if you haven't looked into addiction in detail, it's now given you a great place to start. So thanks for coming on.
Mate, thank you. Appreciate it.